All right, so we want to have a conversation around that and get to understand really the implications and, of course, the repercussions, I beg your pardon, for that exit of Britain from the European Union. Right now, joining me in studio is Anzetse Were. She is an economist. Thank you so much for joining us on Friday
You're
Briefing.
welcome.
All right, so there are quarters that have termed this move as reckless because just hours after the vote, the Google is going crazy with, Britons searching what is the EU, not even the Brexit, but, just talking about that gap in information and now where we are right now.
Yeah. I think if you look at the broad patterns of the votes, there were some very clear divides. Generationally, there was a divide where people sort of the age of 45 and below generally wanted to remain, but those who are about 50 and above generally wanted to leave. And then when you look at it geographically, Northern Ireland and Scotland were very much about remaining.
Right.
And so, as I'm sure you're aware of, there also talks about now, does Scotland want to stay, does Northern Ireland want to stay? But I think closer to home, in terms of how it's impacting Africa, of course, we've seen the prices of commodities fall. So that trend that we've seen throughout this year seems to be continuing. But also our Eurobonds, the Eurobonds of Rwanda, Ethiopia, and some other African countries have been battered a bit as well. And some of our currencies have weakened.
All right.
But we'll see whether this will be a short-term phenomenon or whether it will continue into the medium and long term.
All right, but we're already seeing results of the votes with, the currency going to the low levels of where it was 1985. What repercussions or what implications does this have for Britain?
Well, for Britain, it's going to be quite difficult because, well, if I look at it from a Kenyan perspective, first of all, when we're selling our flowers and our horticulture to the UK, it will be more expensive for the Brits to buy. So that will be one thing. I mean, for us, in terms of our imports, the imports will be a bit cheaper for us to afford while the British pound stays weak. So I think we need to sort of look at the short-term effects that are going to happen and whether these are going to become structural changes in terms of how the economy functions. One of the bigger stories also that we're having a concern with in terms of Africa and in Kenya is that when you look at sort of economic issues such as EU subsidies to farmers, England and the UK had been quite strong in support of African farmers, saying those subsidies need to end. If you look at the withdrawal of funds of about 20% that the EU took from the African mission to Somalia, again, the UK was against that. So we need to look at that there were some things where the UK was on our side and was an important voice for certain African issues, and we're going to lose that. And so we need to start looking for now allies within the EU, outside of the UK, that will sort of start to champion our causes.
All right, but how fast should we look for these allies? Because this is not going to happen immediately. It will take maybe several years. I'm seeing 2 years and above. How soon will we need to get the allies that you're talking about? And also, how soon will this effect really be felt?
Well, we'll see. But I think we need to start working on it as soon as possible. And particularly for those who were using the UK as a gateway into Europe, the businesses in Kenya that were using exports into the UK as a gateway into Europe will have to rethink and redesign their models around that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So there's also the issue about one of the issues that was really part of this debate was immigration, and the Britons were saying that they did not have opportunities of employment because of people who are coming from other countries. So for them, will this improve the situation? Will this likely improve livelihoods for them?
I think it's just a reflection of the insularity that seems to be going on in parts of the UK right now that's reflected in the vote. I mean, generally immigration is generally seen as a positive for the labour pool in countries such as the UK, where there is an aging population and where there is a need for young, active, motivated talent to sort of keep the economy running. So it will be interesting to see how that demographic dividend that they've been benefiting from their borders being open to the rest of Europe, and whether that's going to affect their productivity. But the broader concern, I think, for Kenya and Africa is that we may see a slowdown in the British economy. So sort of the FDI we were getting from there may go down. The exports that we were exporting there may go down. But also in terms of development assistance, I don't think the UK government government will change how much it gives in terms of development assistance. But if that economy is slowing down, obviously, continents such as Africa are going to be getting less from them.
All right. Now, this, of course, has been a conversation worldwide, but someone is sitting at home right now and thinking, why should I care? Why should I care as a Kenyan about what happens, in Europe, even with this exit, and of course, what has happened? Why should anybody care here in Kenya?
I think it's a broader story around this notion of consolidation. In Africa, the story very much right now is for consolidation and bringing together different economic blocks. And we're sort of looking at the EU as look at this model of how countries can come together. So it's very interesting that as Africa is sort of getting momentum towards consolidation, you see the UK step out of that. I think the only real country that would be affected by that would be Nigeria, where there may be some people from Biafra saying we need to secede. Look at what the UK has done. But I think it's just interesting for us to see what lessons can we learn from that in terms of how do we structure our regional blocks and the free trade zone that we're trying to push for in Africa, so that we don't get the situation where now different people want to get out of it.
All right. Thank you so much. Anzetse Were, an economist, talking to us about the Brexit, the leave, of course, by Britain from the European Union. Thank you very much for your insight.